President Trump. Michael Atkinson determined a whistleblower's complaint about Trump's July phone call with the president of Ukraine raised urgent concerns. He'll be answering questions behind closed doors, a day after Trump's former envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, met with that committee in private. The chairman of the Intelligence Committee, California Democrat Adam Schiff, says he objects to Trump saying yesterday he'd like to see China investigate former Vice President Biden and his son Hunter's business dealings in that country.
It's wrong for a president of the United States to seek help from a foreign power in a presidential election. That's not okay.
The Trump administration is proposing to change the way food stamp benefits are calculated. NPR's Pam Fessler says it could reduce benefits by $4.5 billion over 5 years.
The proposed rule change involves how a family's utility costs are calculated in determining the size of their monthly food stamp benefit. The administration says some households will see their benefits go up, but almost 1 in 5 will see them cut. It's the third food stamp rule the administration has proposed in the past year that would cut benefits for millions of people.
This is NPR News from Washington.
This is the Public's Radio. I'm Chuck Hinman in Providence. Massachusetts vape shops shut down by the state's 4-month ban on vaping products will be in federal court this morning, hoping to reverse that ban. Steve Brown has a report.
An attorney for several vape shops says his clients will suffer irreparable harm. The court doesn't immediately halt the ban, which was imposed without warning last week by Governor Baker and the Commissioner of Public Health. Attorney Craig Rourke says the state's vape ban is unconstitutional.
There's a strong body of case law that supports our Commerce Clause claims, our First Amendment claims, our regulatory taking claims, and our Contract Clause claims.
Governor Baker says the ban is needed to allow researchers time to figure out why there has been a recent uptick in vaping-related illnesses. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Steve Brown.
Rhode Island's Republican Party is mobilizing to recruit candidates for the 2020 elections. Currently, the party holds just 14 of the 113 seats in Rhode Island's legislature. The state's party chairwoman, Susie Yankee, says Republican strategists have identified 39 House districts and 16 Senate districts they believe would be competitive in 2020, and they're focusing on recruiting candidates in those districts.
We've had a candidate recruitment drive, we've had a volunteer recruitment drive, and we had a full house. A lot of people are interested. We're going to train our candidates starting in February. We'll have a 4-week training class, and we also will have them hitting the road in March, knocking on doors, trying to get some ground game going.
Yankee spoke to the Public's Radio for a bonus Q&A. You can hear that full conversation later this hour or online at thepublicsradio.org. Boston Bruins began their regular season last night with a win over the Stars in Dallas, 2-1. Boston's at Arizona tonight. A chance of early morning showers today, mostly cloudy, gradually becoming sunny, and then a high in the low 60s. Clear tonight with a low in the mid-30s. There's a frost advisory in effect, too. Could be some areas of frostbite early morning. Later on tomorrow, sunny with a high near 60, partly sunny on Sunday, high in the upper 60s. For Monday, showers likely and mostly cloudy with a high in the low 70s. 52 in Providence and New Bedford, 55 in Newport, 54 in Westerly. This is the Public's Radio.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the financial services firm of Raymond James, offering personalized wealth management advice and banking and capital markets expertise, along with a legacy of putting clients' financial well-being first. Learn more at raymondjames.com. And from Capterra for helping people find the right software for their business. From applicant tracking to workflow software, visitors can access more than 1 million software reviews and compare products. More at capterra.com.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm David Green in Culver City, California.
And I'm Steve Inskeep in Washington, D.C. What do 6 pages of text messages reveal about the actions of U.S. diplomats toward Ukraine? House investigators released those messages. They relate to President Trump withholding military aid from Ukraine while also demanding an investigation of a political rival. One diplomat says it's, quote, crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. Another diplomat responds that it's not a quid pro quo and urges his colleague to stop writing text messages about it. Some of these exchanges involve Kurt Volker, a former special envoy to Ukraine. He testified in person before lawmakers yesterday, conducting an impeachment inquiry. Volker's longtime colleagues at the State Department included Ambassador Jim Melville, who was a longtime U.S. diplomat himself and who now teaches at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Steve.
What do you make of the text messages?
They're deeply disturbing. I just see somebody who, in my friend Kurt, somebody who is a real gifted diplomat and dedicated to building and maintaining the transatlantic alliance, and that's what I know he did throughout his career in the State Department. But you know, it's in a way it's a bit of the triumph of hope over wisdom, and dealing with people who don't seem to have the same appreciation for the need to align our national interests with our values, which is the way you come up with a good policy. You know, throw in some deep knowledge of history and culture, and you're going to have a good result in terms of our foreign policy.
Instead, there seems to have been a focus on President Trump wanting to have the family of Joe Biden, his political rival, investigated. And in fact, there's a text message in which Volker himself writes to a Ukrainian advisor. It's July 25, which is the same date, if I'm not mistaken, of the president's phone call with the president of Ukraine. Heard from the White House, assuming President Zelensky of Ukraine, convinces Trump that he will investigate, get to the bottom of what happened, we will nail down a date for a visit to Washington. It does seem pretty clear if you do the president this political favor, you get a perk like a visit to the White House.
Well, it's illegal and immoral to solicit foreign assistance in our elections. And anyone who would give any sort of truck to that kind of thought is making a fundamental mistake.
Are you surprised to find your longtime friend Kurt Volker in the middle of all of this?
Well, it reminds me a little bit of that frog that was having a nice time in some cool water, and the heat just kept getting more and more problematic. And when you add people who are not professionals, the Giulianis and the Sondlands, and you have them operating at the highest levels on the most important issues of foreign policy, you know, the result is going to be somewhat less than ideal.
You just referred to Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney who has involved himself in Ukraine matters, and Gordon Sondland is U.S. ambassador to the EU, who had been a contributor to President Trump's campaign. I think I hear you saying that professional diplomats like your friend Kurt Volker may have been overwhelmed by the political imperatives of people close to the president.
Yeah, indeed, that's what it looks like to me.
What do you think about this statement that was drafted for Ukraine's president announcing an investigation? A statement, by the way, he seems never to have signed.
If your moral compass is so broken that you don't see this as illegal and immoral, this idea of soliciting foreign assistance in any respect, then I don't understand how you can be a good leader or make good decisions, and that's why we find ourselves here.
Ambassador, thanks very much for your insights.
Thank you, Steve.
Jim Melville is a longtime U.S. diplomat. He was U.S. ambassador to Estonia, among other positions, is now at the College of Charleston.
MGM Resorts has agreed to pay up to $800 million to victims of the Las Vegas mass shooting. But for many, the money means little. Here's NPR's Layla Fadl.
2 years after Lisa Fine survived the mass shooting on the Las Vegas Strip that killed 58 and wounded hundreds of others, she's in a treatment program for PTSD. She speaks to me by phone as she drives back from a therapy session.
I'm tired of feeling terrified everywhere I go, and I'm tired of the nightmares of that night and the nightmares of, I won't even explain what these nightmares are. It's horrific.
Her treatments are costing thousands of dollars. She's lost thousands more in income. Fine is on disability from her role running Route 91 Strong, a support group for victims of the shooting at the Country Music Festival. And the settlement, well, it means that maybe some of those bills can get paid, but it doesn't end the pain or explain why this happened.
It doesn't matter what that number is. I mean, that is a significant amount of of money, but the people that are lost is priceless. You can't put money on that. Nobody would say, hey, you know, I'm getting such and such amount of money, and in order to do that, I had to lose my loved one. Nobody would want that. Nobody.
And maybe there won't ever be closure, she says. But at least with this settlement, something is coming to an end. She wants to put that day behind her, and she wants the mass shootings to stop.
Something has to be done. I plead with the president. I plead with our leaders. Just please, can we do something to get all sides together so that we can stop the future mass shooter from killing innocent people? Please.
Under the proposed settlement, all pending litigation would be dropped, and it's not an admission of liability by MGM Resorts. Robert Eglett, the lead attorney negotiating with MGM on behalf of the victims, praised the company in a press conference for doing right by the victims. He says it was the best deal that thousands of people who filed claims could have gotten.
What happened that night and the impacts on these people is horrific. But this is a step in the right direction to try to put that behind us for our community and these victims.
It's hard to understand what to feel, you know, my daughter's not here anymore, you know.
Gus Castilla's daughter, Andrea, was killed in the massacre. She was 27. She was wearing the jacket her dad got her on her birthday. He says she always loved what he bought her. He misses her. When she worked at Sephora, he'd go meet her for lunch sometimes, and she'd get so excited.
This is not a normal thing for a kid to be so excited to be at lunch with their dad. He just really looked up to me and loved me.
On the morning of the second anniversary this week, Castilla woke up at 5 a.m.
I had my phone, and I looked at her picture, and I started falling into tears. I felt like deep pain in my heart.
But then he showered and had a beautiful day, he says. He feels she's with him, and he says he knows she'd want him and her 3 siblings to live and to find joy. Layla Falden, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
You're listening to the Public's Radio 89.3 FM, serving Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. We get support from listeners and from the Providence Speaking Society, presenting TEDx Providence, the day of Rhode Islanders sharing ideas, this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Vets. Tickets.tedxprovidence.com. From the Piano Practice, offering full-service piano care for tunings, repairs, and restoration, because a well-tuned piano sounds and plays better. PianoPracticeRI.com. From bottles stocked with a fresh crop of autumnal beer, wine, and spirits for seasonal fun. Bottles just off Gano Street on Providence's east side. And Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, with a mission to provide more choices for health insurance for Rhode Island small businesses. Details at nhpri.org.
small diner where a disheveled waitress recites the menu options.
Egg and spam, egg, bacon, and spam, egg, bacon, sausage, and spam, spam, bacon, sausage, and spam.
Here, spam is unavoidable. That's okay for the husband, he loves this stuff. But the wife? Well, she preferred a substitute.
Who would have egg, bacon, spam, and sausage without the spam? Why not? It would be egg, bacon, spam, and sausage with it. I don't like spam.
And for some reason, there's a table full of singing Vikings. Look, either you find it funny or you don't. But I assure you, a lot of people found it hilarious. And it's been immortalized on a TV screen at the Spam Museum in Austin, Minnesota, where it's on a constant loop.
Why can't you have egg, bacon, spam, and sausage? I've got spam in it.
Has anybody counted how many times they use the term spam?
I was just thinking about that.
This is NPR, so we're going to have to go back and count.
Go back and count, I think so.
That is Sava Lord. She's the manager here. And I did count. I gave up after the 400th time, if you count the Vikings individually, which I do. Sava Lord says the image of spam in the UK before that sketch was different. The English ate spam during the rationing of World War II. For them, it was about necessity. Monty Python changed all that.
They really did help bring it back to life. I mean, it was definitely a war ration, and the 1970s really helped bring it back into something that was an everyday person's food. This made it more kitschy, and it made it more fun.
Monty Python kept having fun with spam. In the film Monty Python and the Holy Grail, King Arthur and his knights approach Camelot, where they stumble upon an elaborate musical number. And that line we call mass email advertisements spam. Internet historian Brad Templeton was an early adopter back in the 70s and 80s.
You know, the nerds of that generation had grown up with Monty Python.
And the term spam didn't begin with advertising, but with a text-based online fantasy game.
And if they posted the same message again and again, that reminded people of the repetition in the famous spam sketch. Spam, 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 eggs and spam. My very poor imitation of Monty Python there. So people started saying that if you did this, you were spamming. So it wasn't advertising, it wasn't junk mail.
But once those emails started pouring in, spamming stuck. And Monty Python's association with spam became even more prominent. As if including it more than 400 times in a sketch wasn't enough. Phil Harrell, NPR News.
And this is Morning Edition from NPR News. Our theme music was inspired by BJ Liederman. I'm David Green.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. You're listening to the Public's Radio 89.3 FM Friday morning bonus Q&A coming up. But we got support from listeners and from RISLA's College Planning Center, assisting Rhode Islanders in completing the FAFSA application for federal student aid for college appointments at collegeplanningscenter.org. Rhode Island Republican Chairwoman Susie Yankee stopped by our studio yesterday to discuss a range of political issues, and here with that conversation is our host, the Public's Radio's political reporter, Ian Donis.
We're also joined by Scott McKay, political analyst for the Public's Radio. Hi there, Scott.
Good morning, everyone.
Rhode Island Republican Chairwoman Susie Yankee, we're a little bit less than a year out from primary elections for the Rhode Island legislature in September 2020. A new progressive group, the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, emerged last week, and they say they hope to run about 25 candidates, most of them for the legislature. Where do things stand with your effort to elect more Republicans to the General Assembly?
So sure, we took a deep dive into the data to look at where we had a good chance of winning in 2020. And we identified about 39 representative districts and 16 senatorial districts that we think if we put credible candidates up there, we'd have a good chance of winning. So we've had a candidate recruitment drive, we've had a volunteer recruitment drive, and we had a full house. A lot of people are interested. We're going to train our candidates starting in February. We'll have a 4-week training class. And we also will have them hitting the road in March to be out there knocking on doors, trying to get some ground game going.
What is the biggest hurdle to getting people to run for office?
You know, I think that the political climate has changed and it has gotten nastier, and the civil discourse has changed a lot. So I think people are a little reticent to jump into the foray. But what we tell them is, step up, this matters. Like, what is left in your wallet after the government has taken away all your money? Do you have any disposable income? This really matters. Quality of education. As I try to tell candidates, this is such a beautiful state with a storied history. Jump in. Don't you want to stay here? You know, we know based on the census that the highest demographic that is leaving is our 21 to 30-year-olds, because there's no opportunity here for them. And then the next demographic is our senior citizens, and they're leaving because they can't afford to stay here. You have to jump in.
Let's go to Scott.
I'm just wondering, when you do talk about the crassness and the coarseness of the current political discourse, let's be honest, isn't your leader, President Trump, someone who's actually fomenting some of this stuff with his tweets, calling reporters enemies of the people, these kinds of rhetoric coming out of the White House? Isn't that contributing big time to the polarization?
Sure, I think he's a disruptor. I will agree with you. It's not my style, and that's what I want to tell people. I'm more than willing to agree to disagree with people, and I hope that I bring that to Rhode Island politics. I'm more than willing to listen to the other side and sit down and have a dialogue. I think there's enough issues and problems in Rhode Island, from our small businesses being overregulated and overtaxed to budget transparency. When the budget process, in 28 minutes, the Finance Committee votes on the final budget, really doesn't give me warm fuzzies about how things are going. And certainly we can talk about the quality of education. When the New York Times comes in and says, gee, look, Providence is a horror show, and yet you have David Cicilline up there spouting things about the national level. He was Providence mayor at one point. What happened?
Aren't some of these problems the same as nationally? And the SAT scores are out today. The Boston Globe had a story about it. And sure enough, surprise, surprise, Barrington, East Greenwich, North Kingstown, South Kingstown do very well. And of course, Classical High School, which is 76% minority and is a city school, but it's a by-examination school where about 40% of the stream comes from private schools to go to classical. So isn't this really a function of socioeconomics, where the parents who have the incomes and the education level, their kids are doing pretty well, but it's the other urban kids and the poorer kids that are being left behind?
You know, I think that that's a avalanche of excuses, you know, that poor children can't learn. I have more faith in what they can do. I would like to see science-based evidence literary programs so that literacy can, from K to 3, that they can actually learn how to read. When you have less than 10% of the Providence students reading at grade level, that's a big problem.
I'd like to switch gears to a different issue. There's an ongoing debate about the proposed Fane Tower in Providence. Some people say it's too big for the site. They don't like the design. Other people say it would send an important signal that Rhode Island is growing and open to economic development. How do you come down on the proposal?
You know, I think that the governor, when she first got elected, she made a promise that we were going to be more business friendly. We were going to have cranes in the sky. I don't see any. I go back to architects like...
There have been some cranes in the sky in Providence.
And Quonset Point is booming.
Oh, I love Quonset Point. I think that they're doing a good job, but there's not enough. I mean, when you go to other cities and towns, I've been down to Nashville, I've been to other cities and towns, and there really are a lot of cranes in the skies, even Washington, D.C., not here. And I look back on architects like to push the envelope a little bit. If you go back to even the Vietnam Veteran Memorial, people were outraged at this design. It turned out to be one of the most moving monuments that we have in Washington, D.C. So Mr. Fane came up with the Fane idea. Let's get moving on being and developing that area. They're starting to develop it with Brown and making it an informational technology center, but people need to live someplace.
Do you think it's right for the State House to be so aggressively stepping in for the Providence planning problem? Don't Republicans believe in local control? I mean, you got David Place from Burrillville, and here he's yelling about the Fane Tower, but in fact, the town of Burrillville stood up for that power plant and used their local control.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of home rule charter. So it's unfortunate that the people that control Providence don't see this as an economic boom. I got very worried when Senator Ruggiero came in and took that away from Providence. So you're absolutely right. I believe that the city of Providence should have a voice in it. I wish they would see the economic benefit of actually developing that land that has sat vacant for a long time.
We're still a few years out from Rhode Island's next gubernatorial election in 2022, and I'm sure you have plenty to be concerned with in the run-up before then, Sue Cienki. But I wonder, do you have a short list of people who you think could be good Republican candidates for governor?
Well, I think that there's a number of people that are starting to emerge as maybe interested in running. But, my job, again, I need to build a farm team. In 2020, my focus is on making sure we start electing people to the town council, the school committee, and most importantly, the General Assembly. Because it wouldn't matter who was governor if we elect a governor in 2022 if there's no support system at the General Assembly for them.
I appreciate what you're saying, but who's on your short list? How about Robert Flanders, the former state Supreme Court justice?
I think that we have to let the process play out and see who's interested. People have to talk to their family. It's a huge undertaking to want to be governor of the state. So I think we have to let those people decide whether they want to step up to the plate.
A new face like a Blake Phillippe or an old reliable like Flanders, or somebody who jumps out to me is Ron Makeley, who just retired after a great career as the president up at Bryant University.
Yes, he's actually done an outstanding job at Bryant University. I'm sure that's going to be a huge loss for them there, but he hasn't mentioned to me whether he wants to run or not.
We've talked about political polarization, and it's understandable on some level that Republicans defend Republicans, Democrats defend Democrats, but how do you think we can move past that kind of knee-jerk reaction in our country?
Well, I think what you have to do is applaud the other side when they do something right. In particular, I applaud the appointment of the new education commissioner, Angelica Infante Green. I applaud her appointment. I think that she has come in, assessed the situation, and now that I just hope that between the mayor and the governor, they allow her to do what she sees as her vision. Let's see what her plan is. So anytime that an opposing party does something that you can jump on and it actually makes the state better, we have to applaud